So how do you make a follow-up for a game so revolutionary as Mario 3, where you go to 8 distinct and memorable worlds, which housed many secrets of wonder and excitement? You make a game based around the very idea of exploring an extensive new world with longer levels, which had even more obstacles and even more secrets, all the while having to get the game out the door as quick as you can. But we'll get to that. In Mario World, after you start a new game and get past the intro screen, the first thing you're presented with is this cramped overworld. It's very reminiscent of what an overworld map in Mario 3 would look like. But after you beat the first boss and step off this initial island, you get to see just how big the overworld really is. This is when you knew you were in for a real adventure. The place of your adventure being known as Dinosaur Land, which fittingly has dinosaurs. It also has a forest of illusion, that of which seems oddly similar to a certain other sort of mysterious woods. Football players that throw baseballs, 4 differently colored switch palaces to discover, which may make certain levels easier or harder after you switch them on, ghost houses, which were a completely new level theme, a sunken ship, which is one of the airships from Mario 3, but apparently crashed into the ocean, and secrets. Am I saying this enough? More secrets. Exploration and discovery plays a major key in Mario World. Before, with Mario 3, there were always plenty of things to discover and find, but it all played to the end of you getting to the one goal of the level, which would then get you to the end of the world, which would then take you to the next world. In Mario World, you could actually replay levels at any time via the overworld, and there are levels with more than just one exit. Finding a level's secret exit then unlocks a brand new path, which may take you to a new level or branch you off into a different world. Or in some cases, to Star Road, which acts as a secret world that is then connected to the other worlds in the game. This would have Dinosaur Land feel much more natural, as some secrets would have you dipping in and out of different parts of the areas and islands. But it doesn't end there, because you have Secret World inside of a secret world, one where the levels can act as a challenge even for more experienced Mario players. Beating the secret world within a secret world has you unlock an autumn version of the overworld, where some enemy sprites change in the levels. It's something small, but it stands out as being a unique and fun reward for the player. Something I desperately wish they would revisit in another game. Please? There may be a lot of secret exits, but it's not overwhelming to where you don't know if you've explored a level enough to find everything. Thankfully, every level that has more than one exit is red on the overworld map, while levels with just one exit are yellow. Unless you are like how I was when I was a kid, aka stupid. Because I didn't realize what the red dots meant, and I just thought any level could have a secret exit. It took me a few years to actually put 2 and 2 together, and let me tell you, the revelation that I was just a complete and utter idiot shook me more than I had any right to. The feedback loop of Mario 3 is always about moving forward and giving you things to reward forward progression. It has short, fast-paced levels, and it keeps you moving. Mario World's feedback loop involves the player going back to bigger levels numerous times to find new rooms, get new exits, and to explore the map. In a way, it kinda makes Mario World feel like the more meatier game, if that makes sense. This creates different feels between Mario 3 and World, and may help explain that while they both are a couple of the best Mario games ever made, they each have their respective camps that prefer one over the other. One of the secret levels in Mario World is known as Top Secret Area. This is just a single screen where you can stock up on power-ups. This was more than likely added due to the lack of mushroom houses and an inventory screen on the overworld map like from Mario 3. But instead having it be this secret level hidden away in a corner of the map makes it feel like you're finding a treasure trove of goodies. Though it does get annoying to have to go back and forth between the current level you're on and all the way back to World 2 every time you just want a cape. Take that inconvenience as the price you pay for getting power-ups anytime you want, if you wish. Top Secret Area is also identifiable as being a cutesy blushing hill in the Game Boy Advance release of the game. I love him. He deserves to be happy. Back in the early days of YouTube, when ROM hacking was young and we were all kids and stupid, or at least I was, there would be videos made about a super ultra secret area where it would either be a hidden level or hidden power-up. These would all be fake, obviously, but you didn't know that when you were 10 and you just wanted to get to the super ultra mega secret that this one person on the internet could find, but you couldn't. And just please, there's gotta be something over there. Just, why would they put an island right there if there's not something there? Super Mario World would have a unique enemy situation. Of course, we have brand new enemies introduced, such as Rexes, Charging Chucks, Magic Koopas, Reznor, Fishbones, Fuzzies, and so on. But Mario World had a stark absence of key enemies we can't imagine modern Mario games without, like bloopers or chain chomps. But I feel like I've taken for granted an aspect of Mario World up until now, and that's what the game had done to reinvent pre-existing enemies. You have Goombas, but now they don't die from just being stomped on. Now you can grab them and knock them into other enemies, almost like in Super Mario USA. This change to the Goombas would also highlight the importance of grabbing items in Mario World, where you could finally throw turtle shells upwards and carry keys to keyholes for new exits. These Goombas, as we see them in Mario World, would be later retconned to be an entirely unique species of Goombas known as Galoombas, regardless of the fact that they were referred to merely as Goombas in the original manual of Mario World. Previously, Koopa Troopas would come in two colors, green for the ones that would fall off ledges, and red for the ones that turned around on ledges. In the NES games, these guys would be jumped on, and then you could kick their shells. Or in Mario 3, you could also grab their shells. But in Mario World, suddenly we have 4 different types of Koopa colors, green and red, but then yellow and blue. Blue Koopas are like the red ones, but move faster, and yellow ones are like the green ones, but try to follow after Mario. A completely new element for these guys is now that once you stomp on them, you hit them out of their shell. And depending on the shell color they were in, this would determine their behavior once they got kicked out of their shell. Whether they'd hop right back into their shell, or if they'd just end up kicking their own shell back at you. Or if they're a Koopa jumping into a yellow shell, they would become invincible from attack. Unless you just do a spin jump. This is the first game in which Lakitu's Cloud is rideable if you defeat him in a way other than jumping onto his head. Dry Bones now throw projectiles at you in set intervals. Hammer Brothers would be replaced by these guys known as Amazing Flying Hammer Brother. They ride on platforms that would sway back and forth while throwing hammers every which way. Defeating one from the bottom allows you to use its platform. Wrench moles that would appear on airships in Mario 3, which were moles that had turtle shells on their backs for some reason, are now just normal moles, and they pop out of the ground to chase you. And finally, Piranha Plants, a staple since the second level of Mario 1, have now been completely changed as well. There's only a single level in the entire game that has usual Piranha Plants, while every other Piranha Plant in every other level has these newer jumping Piranha Plants that pop out of pipes. This is also the first time we see enemies like Ninja and Pokey reappear for Mario USA. Pokey, who had gotten his now staple yellow color from this entry. Since I've grown up alongside most every Mario game, I feel like I've taken for granted something that we more than likely will never see again. Rather than taking all the enemies from the previous games and just using them as we had remembered them, we have Nintendo changing up their behaviors to make them feel distinct from the previous entries while designing levels around these new characteristics. While that would be really interesting to see again, Nintendo taking these characters and revamping them into brand new ways, I don't see that happening. For this game, Mario's number of power-ups goes down a bit, focusing largely on Fire Flowers or the new Cape power. Mario World may not have as many power-ups as Mario 3, but would go on to be the first game to star Mario's dinosaur companion, Yoshi. Yoshi had been a feature Miyamoto wanted since the very first Super Mario Bros., but he knew that the NES hardware wasn't capable for something as advanced as a writable companion. Hey, wait a minute. There's 4 different Yoshi colors, each having their own ability when they swallow a shell. Yellow Yoshi is the worst one, just stomps around. Red Yoshi's okay, he spits fire. Blue is by far the best one because he allows you to fly for a long time. And green doesn't do anything particularly special, and his ability is dependent on what color of shell he has in his mouth. So, I mean, he's okay. Back to the new Cape power-up though, which you get from a feather. I don't know how feather equals cape, but now that I think about it, I don't know how leaf equals raccoon, so I'm not worried about it. The cape allows Mario to hit nearby enemies and fly, much like the raccoon ability from Mario 3, but the cape is not as easy to control as Raccoon Mario. You have to actively control Mario's ascension at certain intervals in order to continue getting height and airtime. This makes it as powerful as Raccoon Mario and as OP since you can fly over levels, but it's an ability that a player has to learn to use rather than just using it from the get-go. Bosses are still pretty easy, again. I do give them credit for giving them more variety than the last game though. Most of the Koopalings have their own style of boss fight. Some ghost houses have a unique mini-boss with a big boo. And we have a new mid-fortress boss, the previously mentioned Reznor. And we can't forget about Bowser, who they colored their sprite incorrectly for, and didn't even notice that they did that until they had to redraw him for Super Mario Maker. Great. But his boss fight is memorable, with his first appearance inside his clown car. I got stuck on him as a kid, and it took me ages to figure out the very predictable pattern to beat him, but I felt like a genius when I did figure it out. I'll tell you what, the last castle is also worthy of note due to the replayability of it, much like the nature of the full game. You'll have 3 main challenge rooms before you get to Bowser, but you essentially get to choose what your first 2 challenges will be by a selection of doors. Some are easier than others, and there will be trial and error, but it's fun to at least check by each door. Or you could skip the first 2 challenge rooms completely by going into the castle via the secret back door. I'm a fan of back doors personally. Do you get it? Let's talk graphics. The game looks good. It has a distinct style that sets it apart from the Mario games before and after it, but in terms of what the Super Nintendo was capable of, we will go on to see many titles that surpass Mario World with graphics and overall presentation. Which is understandable, this happens with the beginning of a console's life. The developers are still trying to learn the ins and outs of the hardware to fully capitalize on their limitations. The same thing happened between Mario 1 and 3 after all. But Mario World would go on to be the only 2D outing Mario had on the Super Nintendo. And Yoshi's Island doesn't count, so it's a bit harder to look past it. When you consider that levels start looking too similar between early and later levels, it becomes even harder to look past, and makes you wish that they had the time to fit in more tile sets to help distinguish the different areas of Dinosaur Land. Going back to play Mario World for the millionth time to record footage for the video, I noticed things that I don't think ever happened to me before. How in the world did I just kill an enemy 4 blocks below me? How did this shell go through the block from the top and somehow manage to make the item pop out? So when you're killing a charging Chuck with your cape, he goes flying off screen. So it's kind of weird when this one decides to go down the slope as a slide before his descent to the bottomless pit below. But I understand wanting a little bit more fun before you die. I get it. And lastly, what just happened here? Super Mario World is so magical that you can just fall into the ground for some asinine reason. Good. Speaking of magical game code that's so whimsical that it can occasionally just be nonsensical and kill you because it just wanted to, Super Mario World is so magical that with arbitrary code execution, you can code entirely different games into it. Like Snake and Flappy Bird. That's all I have to say about that, really. People have a lot of time on their hands. I'm talking slower so that gameplay of Flappy Bird can be on screen longer. It's said that the development of Super Mario World was rushed, which makes sense considering it had to be ready for the launch of the Super Nintendo. There's a lot of unused code and graphics left in on the cart, and Miyamoto would go on to say that many scrapped ideas from Mario World's development would instead go on to be used for future Mario titles. But with how much content the game has regardless of the crunch, it manages to still captivate and engage people. Something I'm sure Fallout 76 is jealous of. I did absolutely gush about Mario 3 in the last section, and I may have sounded a bit more harsh on Mario World in comparison, but thanks to the overall charm of Mario World, it's probably my favorite classic 2D Mario game. There may be less overall variety compared to 3, but there's still plenty to love about Mario World. It's no wonder that these are the 2 games people debate over which one is the best 2D Mario game, and why these are the 2 games Nintendo constantly takes inspiration from. Inspiration loosely, more like ripping off. All of the games we've been talking about up until now have been on the home console front, but Nintendo of course wasn't just working on their NESs or their SNESs. they had their game nesses as well. Two 2D Mario games were made for the Game Boy, those being Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2. These games are weird. Now, Mario of course was created by Shigeru Miyamoto, and he, more times than not, has an iron grip on what is or isn't in Mario games. To the extent that he got upset and threatened to cancel an entire game's development just because someone wanted to put a gold block on Mario's head, and Shiggy didn't like that. Point is, Miyamoto has been Mario's gatekeeper, who up until more recently likes having him under lock and key. But around the development of Mario Land 1 and 2, Miyamoto had been far too busy with other projects to be the head of development. As such, it would be Gunpei Yokoi, the guy behind games like Metroid, Kid Icarus, and the Game Boy itself, who would take the leading role in developing the Mario Land series. The Mario Land series can be best illustrated as Miyamoto being an overbearing parent who goes out of town for the weekend, so the kids decide to go crazy and have a party when they're out. Mom's gone! Mom's gone! Quick, let's make a game before they get back! Rather than the usual Mushroom Kingdom, our first Mario Land game takes us to a kingdom that Mario has yet to ever visit again, Dinosaur Land. The ruler of this new kingdom being Daisy rather than Peach. This of course being the first time we ever see Daisy. Which, if that's a good or bad thing that we got Daisy thanks to this game.
Nintendo! Whoa! Right! Yeah! What? Yeah!
I'll let you decide. The game has you going through 4 worlds. One based off of Egypt, one based off of the supposed lost continent of Mu, one designed after Easter Island, and China. Our story involves an alien named Tatonga who has taken over Dinosaur Land by hypnotizing the inhabitants. Fairly typical stuff for a game like this, aside from the bad guy being an alien. Which, it's fitting having the creator of Metroid oversee a Mario game where the antagonist is a weird alien. And finally, we can talk about the game itself. It has not aged particularly well. Due to Super Mario Land being a launch title for the Game Boy, the developers were still trying to work around their limitations, as is per usual with this type of thing. So, every single one of the 12 levels reuse sections of themselves. If you look for it, you'll notice at least one part of the level that ends up repeating by the end of the stage. They usually do a decent job hiding this fact, so most players aren't going to notice this, or care. Usually, it was just used as a way to keep memory down but pad out the length of the level. Even with this padding, you can still beat the game within 25-30 minutes. Also, due to early limitations, the graphics are all super teeny tiny. And for the same reason, turtle shells, rather than bounce off of walls, explode. And also, the Fire Flower is now replaced with the Super Ball Flower. The Super Ball Flower lets you throw one singular ball around the screen to kill enemies or collect coins. Miss your target though, and you'll have to wait several seconds for the ball to disappear to try to shoot out another one. Because of this and how clunky it can feel if you miss your mark, the Super Ball has to be the lamest Mario power-up ever devised. The momentum is all off too. It doesn't feel tight, and the second you hold down the run button, Mario is zooming off too quickly. You don't build momentum, you just have it in an instant. This doesn't stop you from suddenly losing all momentum when you make a jump, which helps you make jumps easier to make so you're not zooming around midair, but it doesn't feel natural and it's something you have to get used to. Regardless of these limitations and problems, the game is still fun to play, which is the most important bit. The levels, while simple in design, do feel distinct enough from one another between the 4 worlds, thanks to different background objects and enemies exclusive to certain worlds. The added variety of having a submarine level and an airplane level helps as well. And again, the fact that there are only 12 levels. You'd really have to try to make them all similar at that point. It's a fun game for a half-hour's distraction, but it's not something that can be held up anywhere near in the same regard as, say, Mario 3D World. Or even the original Super Mario for that matter. Not even close. Your Soviet Union type propaganda shall not fool me. I see through the lies. The sequel, Mario Land 2 on the other hand, acts as a complete 180 for Mario Land 1. Immediately you can notice this by the larger, more detailed sprites and environments. And they actually programmed shells to be kicked this time. It's not the smoothest looking thing, but it works. After getting a good look at the game, the second you start moving around, you'll notice that they fixed the momentum. It's not quite there on the level of either Mario 3 or World, but it's an improvement for Mario Land by leaps and bounds. Mario Land 1 was pure distilled platforming through simple horizontal stages that only go right. You may get thrown one weird little gimmick, but don't count on anything particularly outstanding. Whereas Mario Land 2 manages to consistently dish out creative new level themes and tile sets, giving even the far more advanced Mario World a run for its money. In Mario Land 2, you'll be going to 6 zones in order to defeat Wario, who has his first appearance ever in this game. Wario has invaded Mario's mansion, which he inexplicably owns, on his own private island, that we never see or hear from ever again. So rather than the usual saving a damsel, Mario has a brand new goal in Mario Land 2. In these 6 different zones, you have memorable levels that include, but are not limited to, an anthill inside the plumbing of a house, Japanese temples with yokai spirits inside of a whale, ball place, and even space. I can't even imagine Mario in space. You have weird enemies that don't appear in any other Mario games too, like a shark with punching gloves, a fish cattle thing, and ants. Ants! So many ants. And unlike Mario's before or after, you actually get to choose the order you wish to play these 6 zones from the very start, making multiple playthroughs fun as you're able to go to the levels you want at the pace you want. Replayability being important, as it is a smaller handheld game. Thankfully, we also have the return of my favorite, secret levels! These secret levels aren't fully realized levels though, sadly. They can largely be summed up as smaller areas that have more coins than usual, and maybe a power-up for you. There could be a handful of enemies sprinkled in there, but it's nothing too noteworthy like Mario World secret levels. This makes me mostly forget about finding the secret exits on levels on return playthroughs, which is one of the more disappointing aspects of the game. Power-ups aren't anything particularly special, but they get the job done. Mushroom, Fire Flower, Bunny Ears. The Bunny Ears act like Raccoon Mario from Mario 3, discounting the ability to fly. The Fire Flower is given more of a purpose this time around though, now that in levels you can find blocks that can only be destroyed by throwing fireballs at them. These blocks commonly being in the way of hidden rooms and items. A concept originally seen in Mario 3 with ice blocks that you could melt, but those were limited to only the ice-themed levels. After defeating each boss in the 6 zones, one of those bosses being Tatanga as a nice little cameo, you unlock the ability to reach Mario's Overrun Mansion, which acts as the last level. In it, you will go through a 3-story platforming gauntlet, each section having its own unique traps and challenges, before you get to a 3-phase Wario fight. Since the game allows you to go to any of the 6 zones in any order you choose, they're all roughly around the same difficulty. That's something that the developers admit to having some trouble balancing. So it's fair to say that this last level does feel like a sudden difficulty spike. This was something that really stumped me as a kid, as you would have to learn how to react to so many different types of traps, even towards the end of the level. Regardless, it has to be up there as one of the best ending stages to any Mario game, being a good last challenge for the player. The game has a length that's roughly 3 or 4 times longer than Mario Land 1, but still only amounts to about half the length of its highly praised console counterparts. For those of you lost in my nonsense right there, what I'm trying to say is the game is going to last you roughly 2 hours. But for 2 hours, you get a finely crafted game that clearly had a lot of thought and love put into it. A Mario game that honestly doesn't get the recognition that it should, as people seem to mostly forget about the Mario Land games. The magic of both of these games comes from how obvious it is that Miyamoto was not involved in them. This not only shows how tight of a vision Miyamoto had on his original Mario projects, but also what other developers could do with the Pudgy Plumber. These games would show ideas for Mario that we might never have seen if Miyamoto just happened to have the spare time for them. It's weird to think what Miyamoto would have created instead, but I'm more than happy with what we got if it means that we can live in a world where Mario gets to explore the innards of a fully aquatic, placental marine mammal. Having Mario in your pocket was an insane idea, and it still blows my mind the jump of quality between Land 1 and 2, showing how well the development team had learned the ins and outs of the Game Boy by the time they got to making Land 2. And if it weren't for these games existing and wanting to try to do things a bit differently, we wouldn't have such beloved characters like Wario. Or Wario.